Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, a gathering place for fellow fiends the world over to discuss all things freaky and frightening. If you want to be part of the conversation, and I hope you do, I invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, maybe go back and check out some of our previous episodes, leave a comment, and most importantly, let us know the fright flicks you'd like to discuss in the future. That kind of connection is exactly what we're looking for, and it really does make a difference. We're all about sharing the scare, and we want to hear from you. Released in 1984, The Terminator captivated critics and audiences alike with its mind-blowing special effects, intriguing characters, and well-written time travel storyline. Pitting a relentless killer android from the future against two ordinary humans with the fate of mankind lying in the balance, this whirlwind tour de force combined horror and sci-fi elements with breathtaking action sequences. Not bad for a film with an unproven director and an actor known more for his bulging biceps than his acting chops. A box office smash in its day, The Terminator represented a turning point for several of its key players. Writer-director James Cameron spun his tale about an assassin from the future from an actual nightmare he'd had, and teaming up with producer Gale Ann Hurd, the resulting effort is a lean, mean piece of adrenalized storytelling. After years of attempting to transition from Herculean bodybuilder to Hollywood star, seven-time Mr. Universe Arnold Schwarzenegger was perfectly cast as the titular menace, his Teutonic accent and powerful build put to excellent use. Similarly, rising makeup and special effects star Stan Winston's career took a massive leap forward, crafting gooey, gory set pieces alongside some solid, old-school stop-motion sequences, with Brad Fiddel's pounding electronic score setting the pace. Tonight, we celebrate 40 years of The Terminator, which, like its antagonist, remains unstoppable. With sequels, TV spin-offs, and video games galore, he said he'd be back, and since then, he's never gone away. I'm very excited to talk about this sci-fi horror blend of time travel goodness, and I've got an awesome panel to chat about with me, so I'm going to bring everybody in, and let's say hello to Kate Hansen.
Hiya. How you doing?
Mark Easted.
Hey, everybody.
Tim Pallas.
Hey, everyone. Very excited to talk Terminator.
And Daniel Millhouse.
Ahoy, hoy. I'm back.
Awesome. We are here to chat about Terminator from 1984, celebrating its 40th anniversary and its slew of sequels, which include Terminator 2, Judgment Day, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genisys, and Terminator Dark Fate. Thanks for coming on the show, everybody, and welcome. I don't even know where to begin with this, except for to begin at the beginning. 40 years ago, Terminator launched the career of several people. Arnold Schwarzenegger had his, Conan movies. He'd been doing a little bit of dabbling in other features such as Stay Hungry, but he was mostly known as a bodybuilder and not a terrific actor. But James Cameron really put him to use in Terminator, and he became an international superstar. And it also was the debut feature. Well, we'll talk about James Cameron, but this was his first widely released, and the one he didn't get kicked off of. He got booted from Piranha 2. This is the one that kind of put him on the map, and then he did Aliens, and that 1-2 punch kind of sent him on his way. Mark, if I can jump over to you, what was your introduction to The Terminator?
I was 14 when it came out. I did not see it in theaters. I was not allowed to see R-rated movies, at least when my parents were aware that I was seeing them. I don't remember exactly when I saw it, but probably sometime in the late 80s on VHS at some point at a friend's house. I loved it. By then, I already had a love for Bill Paxton, so it was awesome to see him as a punk in one of those early scene where Arnold gets his clothes. But yeah, from that moment, I didn't know, much about Jim Cameron. I didn't know any of the kind of details. I just loved the movie. It was exciting. It was a little bit different, even mildly thought-provoking, I thought, for something that was meant to, somewhat be a sort of a B movie or just like here's a genre picture. So yeah, I really liked it then and have liked it since.
Kate, let's bounce over to you.
I'm really pro action movie guys. I fucking wait. Am I allowed to swear?
Of course you are.
Okay, well, I fucking
Just you.
worship Jean-Claude Van Damme. So
Yeah.
he's just next door, so it's really not that far away. I loved both of them together, and they were always kind of suggested to me at the video store.
Was Terminator, when did you see Terminator in your love of action?
It was too early. I saw Jurassic Park and then I saw that one. So I was probably like 7 or 8.
Did it terrify you or did you love it?
You know what? Because I saw it around Jurassic Park, I was like, this is not as scary as dinosaurs. And so I
That's right.
so it was kind of fun
give
for
me a
me.
killer
Yeah.
robot anytime.
Yeah, I just remember feeling I was like, oh, he's friendly and he's Austrian. I'm Austrian. So I was like, yes.
Daniel, let's bounce down to you. What was your intro? I know you have a long-standing love with the Terminator franchise.
Yeah, I think similar to Kate, I think I probably saw the second one first when I was somewhere around 9 years old. I think it was either this or Aliens was the very first R-rated movie I ever
Oh, wow.
saw, but I didn't see it all in one sitting. My dad showed it to me like Cliff Notes version. So, it was always, cover your ears, close your eyes at this point, or, oh, we're going to fast forward to this section. The only specific scene I remember being cut out of the film for me for the longest time was when John Connor's parents get killed in Terminator 2. That was the only scene for some reason I remember. I think I've only seen that scene maybe twice in my life. I just
like disturbing for you?
No, I just it was just the scene that my
It was
dad
disturbing
thought was
for his dad.
Yeah, the most violent in that one.
Oh my God, that's really cute.
Yeah, and I remember watching it, I think I want to say before Dark Fate came out and going, oh, that's right. There's this scene in here. I thought it was a deleted scene because I hadn't seen it in so long. And then from there, I've seen Terminator 3 in theater, Genesis, and Dark Fate. So I've missed 1 and 4
in the theaters.
Yeah. 2. I didn't see 2 in theaters.
No, you didn't.
No, I did not.
Because otherwise your dad would have been like, stop,
Yeah.
stop.
Stop the projector.
Get the Millhouses out of here. They're a nightmare to watch a movie with. Tim, let's bounce over to you.
So I was born the year the Terminator came out. I remember vividly the ad campaign when I was young for Terminator 2 when it was coming out. I was already obsessed with that movie before I'd even seen it. I was referring to the T-1000 as the water guy or something like that, but I just thought it was so cool. I was probably 7 or 8 when that hit VHS, so my dad had rented both of them. So that was when I watched it, probably 1992 or so. We watched them back to back. Just mind-blowing for me. Daniel, I had a similar thing with my parents, but they would only do that for boobs. So I saw the full movies of those for the most part.
I guess one of the questions that has come up is whether Terminator is in fact a horror movie. I included in my first book, Horror 101, and obviously we're hosting a panel on it here. So obviously I think it's a horror film, but I'm curious to hear what other people's thoughts about it. It's one of those where I wonder if the franchise has kind of changed its genre so that people don't look at the first one as a horror film anymore. But thoughts on Terminator as a horror film?
I would say the first one, definitely. I was telling someone yesterday I was going to be on this panel on my friend's, YouTube horror channel, and they were like, well, Terminator is not a horror movie. But rewatching it last night, it definitely is a sci-fi horror. There's a lot of the gratuitous digging his eye out. That's straight horror. And I think of all of the movies, that's the one where the Terminator is the most scary and the most like a monster, especially because it's the first one where no one knows what this is before it comes out. After that, you kind of have an idea of what's coming. And from there, I think T2 is much more of an action movie than a horror movie. Not that there can't, with the subject matter, you can always have the kills, so there's always a little bit of horror to it. I think the first one, there's a lot of pieces of it that definitely fit into that horror genre.
Terminator 2 even throws in an homage to show that it's horror from Terminator, like when Sarah Connor sees Arnold walking down that hallway in the hospital. I feel like that's like a little bit of a genre shift to show her point of view, being like, oh, she was traumatized from that first movie. So I would say the first movie is definitely suspense horror. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel it's a horror movie. James Cameron wrote it intending it to be a horror movie. I read he was kind of surprised that audiences considered it more of an action movie. And then his later films and that he leaned more into the action because of that. But I think there's horror elements in all the sequels as well. But yeah, definitely the first one, the most horrific, I'd say.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly with the eyeball, it reminds me of Poltergeist with him like tearing his face apart. Both gave me similar freaked out little Kate feelings. I think it's at least equal parts. Certainly one. Two, I agree. When she falls in the hallway, that's like a visceral girl dream that I've had, where it's like, and then you can never get up again. Like, yeah,
Where her
no,
feet are slipping and
yeah.
she's pushing her way back. Yeah.
I think both are equal parts, honestly. I think it just feels so much that you do remove that element of the Terminator being scary. It almost feels like the second one is trying to undo it.
Mm. Well, and Arnold is certainly, he switches sides for the second one for sure. He becomes our hero basically. But in the first one, he appears and he is just, because of his huge physique, he is just this monolith, and he will not stop, as Kyle Reese says. He's just unstoppable. And so when we have these great action scenes, they feel less to me like action for action's sake, but it's this relentless pursuit and our heroes trying to get away, Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese trying to escape. And when we were watching this recently, just the kind of unfolding of the first one, how we kind of learn things piece by piece. When Kyle Reese finally has his exposition dump, we're ready for it because we've been going the entire time and trying to pick up on what's happening.
In that first one, if I remember correctly, because now it's been a few weeks again, upon all the other 5 movies I watched of Terminator, but even the beginning of that one, you don't know if Kyle Reese is good or bad either.
Right.
Going after her,
Mm-hmm.
which I think heightens that.
Well, and that's the thing. Like we watch how we've got 2 people who've clearly come from someplace. We don't even know where they've come from at the time. But one of them immediately walks up and tears a guy's heart out. And the other holds a gun on a cop, but asks him questions and then runs away. So we get a different, like clearly something is going on, but they have different intentions, let's say.
I was going to say too, Aaron, when you talked about the pursuit element, it does have a bit of a sense of a slasher, like Michael or Jason, that the Terminator is. He's not faceless, but he may as well be. He has no emotion, and he doesn't run most of the time, and I'm just going to keep coming, and you can't do anything about it. Except run.
I gotta tell you, I've never thought about that.
He does run. I remember watching. There's one scene where he runs after him.
Yeah.
I can't, or runs after.
Well, he runs and he jumps on the hood of the car.
Yeah, and there's one other scene where I think he's chasing, but it's not much. Most of the time, he's just walking purposefully.
So that would make Sarah Connor one of the few final girls that has sex and lives.
That's right. That's right.
Because it's fucking sci-fi.
Let's talk about Sarah Connor. She is a great heroine, and I love her arc throughout this film. She starts off kind of fun and bubbly, and by the end, she is fighting for her life and prevailing.
Well, just watching it growing up, I don't know why, but I never got the sense that she was as young as she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be like 19 in the movie. So, I mean, I think that adds more to the character of all this happening all at once and just like kind of growing up too. And that's her life now. I don't know why I never realized that, but just reading up on the movies for this.
I didn't realize that she was 19. I would have never guessed that she was 19. Which makes it a perfect slasher movie because you have 30-year-olds playing teenagers.
Yeah,
I think some of that too has to do with the 80s hair and fashion. They're getting her and her roommate are getting ready to go out, and she's wearing Sarah Connor's wearing this outfit. I'm like, it's like kind of frumpy almost. I'm like, you don't look like a 19-year-old going out. Her roommate does, who is kind of a useless but funny character. But it looks more like she's getting ready to go out and have fun, where Sarah didn't seem to be, but it made her seem older to me.
maybe we're just expected to believe that she's 19. Also, 19 used to look a lot different. Like 19.
Well, it's
looked
funny you
weird
say
then.
that because when I was thinking about Terminator Genesis, where we have our new Sarah Connor, where she seems so young. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm
she's
like,
got a baby face.
yeah, yeah.
What if it's
Uh,
also the age, like seeing the movies? Like I know when I'm 8 or 9,
Oh yeah,
19-year-olds
someone in Cool
probably
Odds looks like
looked.
50. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Michael Biehn as Kyle Reese, I think, is a terrific hero, and it was a star-making role for him as well. And then James Cameron certainly eased that along by casting him in Aliens and The Abyss.
Yeah, I've liked him a lot. I loved him in Tombstone growing up too.
Johnny Ringo.
Yeah. Yeah, so big fan. I wish he was in more stuff.
I think he did something recently.
I
He
feel like
was
Michael
I feel
Biehn
like
is
he was
never not
really
working.
active. I know, but I feel like I went from like you hear his name and everything to
He
like
went
Yeah.
I think he went A-list to B-list, and I'm not sure what contributed to that. But I loved seeing him in Grindhouse.
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was recently in just an episode or two of The Walking Dead as well.
Okay.
Okay.
It's interesting you brought up The
Played
Walking
the
Dead. 'cause
leader of a settlement, but he's like in his 70s, isn't he? He looks
Daniel?
a lot older, I can tell you, in The Walking Dead.
67 with a net worth of only
67.
$4 million.
Yeah, I can remember reading an interview with him about like why did he not become the big star? And I wish I could remember more about it, but I think a few choices he made just kind of led to him not getting cast.
I blame it on Navy SEALs.
Because there are definitely obviously some less talented people who probably became way more famous than him.
Well, when Mark brought up The Walking Dead, I was thinking about, I feel in the scene when they're in the department store, Kyle Reese is kind of mirrored in that first season of The Walking Dead when they go through the department store. I feel like it's almost like, I mean, my memory could be bad, but going back to a horror, referencing another horror thing.
But I also love the fact that Kyle Reese is just looking to blend in quickly, like, and the little, Velcro strap on his ankle still makes me smile.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. Those Nikes, I think that was before the Michael Jordan deal, so that might have been the first big thing for Nike.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I remember like those Velcro straps were like all the rage in the 80s because, hey, I actually did see this movie in the theater, 1984. I think I saw it as a double feature with Nightmare on Elm Street, although I may have just conflated them because I know I saw both of them at our little independent theater in Longmont, Colorado.
Very nice.
And I remember watching that and just being blown away. Like you said, the sequence of him digging his eye out. And then, of course, following that up with the "fuck you, asshole" to the landlord. I was like, this movie is so great. And that assault.
He's learning.
Yeah, exactly. He's a learning computer. And the assault scene on the police precinct, Paul Winfield gets wasted. Lance Henriksen gets wasted. And you're like, holy crap. Like those are well, Lance Henriksen wasn't a name, but Paul Winfield certainly was. And so for him to just get wasted so easily, Arnie just comes in and blows everybody away. And you're like, oh, this guy is really, really going to be a problem.
I was struck by that on this rewatch. Like those two characters, you've grown to know them a little bit and you like them. And they spend no time on their death. They both get shot. And I think we have one shot of Paul Winfield as he like rolls away and tells Sarah Connor to like hide or do something. And like, that's it. They're done. They're gone.
Yeah.
But the doctor walks out past him. The smarmy doctor.
So he can show up in 2 more sequels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other people's thoughts on Arnold or the T-800 as a character?
It's just really well done by Arnold. You mentioned people saying he wasn't a good actor, but there's a lot more that he did to prepare for that than just like line delivery. He knew how to assemble those weapons blindfolded and all that. Just his movements, I think, is absolutely perfect, and that's the movie, is him.
Yeah, I don't think if they cast him, we might not even be talking about it.
Yeah, sadly, as soon as you mentioned the T-800, my first image went to Terminator Salvation with the reveal of the CGI Arnold in that one.
Yeah.
It's that kind of ruined the magic.
I thought it was interesting that when they built these earlier models, like the T600s, they still built them to be humanoid, and they basically have like steel skeletons and teeth. And I was like, that's a lot of work for basically what is a walking, gunship. And then I think it's Terminator 3. They talk about that all of the T800s supposedly look like Arnold, which is not true, because when the Terminator shows up in Kyle Reese's flashback, it's not Arnold. It's another guy. Yes, Tim.
I read up on this since our conversation.
Perfect. Good.
So the Terminator itself, I guess, came from a dream James Cameron had of like a metal skeletal thing. So
Okay.
that's the genesis of that.
Nicely done.
And then you had said T101 when we were saying and I had said it's T800. So
Right.
model 101 are the ones that look like Arnold. So there's other models, I
Okay.
guess.
Because
So
it wouldn't make any sense to be an infiltration unit if they all look the same. It's like,
Right.
oh, it's that guy again.
there are a lot of them, I guess, but there are other models. So he's
thank you.
T800 model 101.
And I think, whenever you're dealing with a time travel premise, which is why I think the first one works really well. The idea of no one else comes through. It's just him and me. And I love the simplicity of that, because when we get to Terminator 2 and you're kind of like, so wait, how did they sent the same guy back and they sent another guy back? Where's Kyle Reese in this equation? Like, why didn't they send him back too?
I was just reading this morning that they were thinking about having Michael Biehn play the T-1000. I think they ultimately decided that may be too confusing for the audience.
Well, it'd be confusing for my heart,
Yeah.
I was also reading a lot of Terminator 2 was written into the script for part 1. They just didn't have the budget. He did want to have a liquid metal Terminator. He'd wanted 2 Terminators sent back. The reason they're making those pipe bombs is because there is a section where they're like, hey, let's blow up Cyberdyne before it happens. So the end of part 1 is not a coincidence like it is where they're in that factory. That's supposed to be a Cyberdyne factory. And that's why they obtained the chip and the arm. So a lot was cut, but they did most of it for the sequel.
What's interesting is I don't question any of that. Like, I felt like that the first one is it's just a straight ahead action sequence. And then it does the Cyberdyne. I do like having that little factoid that it's a Cyberdyne factory, because that explains how they got it and nobody else did.
So it's the big time loop. Like, this wouldn't have happened if they didn't get sent back. So
yeah, and you cannot write a time travel story and not have plot holes in it that someone will argue about. It's because is time travel really possible is one of them. But like, what would happen if you did? It's for me, it's always like, does the film or story mostly follow the logic it has set up?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you've set up rules and you follow them, I'm good with it. If you say time travel works that way, then that's cool. It does in this story, as long as you abide by your own rules, because you're always going to have a way to argue that like that wouldn't work. That's not how it happens.
Well, with a 6-film franchise, you immediately are just like, oh my gosh, how many times are we going to build this one time only time travel?
I think that's the scariest part, is that we were robbed of 2 other trilogies, because Terminator Genisys was supposed to be a trilogy, and then even Dark Fate was planned to be a trilogy.
Well, I think Salvation was intended also to be a...
Oh, really?
Genisys is pretty much a complete reboot, but I was reading that script was written to be the sequel to Salvation. Christian Bale just didn't want to be John Connor again. I think it would have been better with Christian Bale, and I am here to defend it today. See when we get there.
Which one?
Genisys.
Oh, good, because I'm here to destroy Genisys. If we just take a quick dip into Genisys, it is the fact that these characters are beloved. Like, we have in our head who Kyle Reese is, who Sarah Connor is, and to have them played by different actors is, not unheard of, but they don't behave like the Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor that we have come to know and love. And our guy who plays John Connor
Jason Clarke.
Jason Clarke, that's right. But when Jason Clarke is our John Connor, I don't find Jason Clarke to be terribly charismatic as an actor. And so for him to be like the leader of these men, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not quite buying that. But also Jay Courtney, like he is just this muscle bound, ripped dude. And I'm like, I liked Kyle Reese as Michael Bihn's incarnation because he just seems like a regular guy. He seems like a soldier who got dropped into this mission and he's like, okay, I got to do my best. And I loved seeing a normal guy versus a muscle-bound Terminator. I think that was a really fun juxtaposition.
You have to understand, Aaron, that when they kept postponing Judgment Day, our foods kept getting more hormones in it.
Is that what it is?
So, yeah. So Kyle Reese he naturally got bigger every time they postponed it.
Yeah, the casting is my biggest issue with the movie for sure.
So Terminator and Terminator 2, we're still dealing with a lot of practical effects. There is some CGI, certainly with a T-1000, but I think the further we get from reality and more into the kind of the CGI fantasy of it, I personally tend to disconnect as a viewer. Like I love seeing those cars racing down the street or the motorcycle semi chase in T2. And I'm like, that is all really happening. There are stunt people, making that big leap with the motorcycle. And that engages me in a way that just watching cartoons throw each other around does not.
Yeah, that's how I feel about the helicopter chase in Genesis. There's no real other way to execute that safely. Yeah, it doesn't look great. I do like Arnold diving out of the thing as a missile, though. That was pretty awesome.
With Cameron, even on T2, while they were developing all that technology and using it, but because it was still in that transition time of where you could do all of this stuff with CGI, that they had to shoot the T-1000 scenes separately. And so and I don't mean separate from the rest of the film, like just that part had to be separate from the rest of the scene it was in. And so the whole crew had to be meticulous about what was happening and going on in the background of the scene and everything else. And so that it still made it feel really real and practical with just the one effect in there, but not this whole world that was created by CGI and can feel fake, especially to us old folks who grew up without it. As it went on to 3 and 4 and the technology graduated, it sucked a little life out of it. And to me, which is somewhat maybe a metaphor for Cameron's career as well, that he got too interested in the technology and it sucked some of the life out of his movies.
Let's talk about Robert Patrick, our T-1000, because I think he's a great villain and a great kind of juxtaposition to what we had seen from Arnold and from the T-800.
And now he runs.
Yeah, he does.
Oh,
yeah.
Although Kate and I were watching the movie together with Tim. Kate goes, why doesn't he just turn into a ball and roll? And now I will never watch the movie the same way again. I'm like, why is he running?
Just be a ball. I don't know. A to B.
Secret sequel to Rollerball or Phantasm.
That's actually what it was written for.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do remember reading that Robert Patrick trained really hard and trained to run without opening his mouth.
Yep.
So that he would not look quite right. Because he's not breathing hard at all. He's just.
Did someone tell him that, or was he like, I would like to?
I don't know if it was his idea or someone else's, but he did train that way that he could do that. He could just run without looking like he was, straining to do it.
The same is true of his combat scenes where he has no change in expression while he's fighting, Arnold. It's or anybody else. It's great. And I had made the comment because in my mind, Terminator 2 was a PG-13 movie, and it's not.
No.
A lot of people get shot. A lot of people get killed. I was like, damn it. In my mind, like the whole series had gone PG-13 after the first one. And that is absolutely not the case. As I was watching, I'm like, nope. So much death, so much murder.
Yeah, he's great in this. That's one of the best villains of all time to me. I know when we were watching it, you had said you think he's doing like a nod to Michael Myers with the head tilts.
Yeah, there's a couple times he tilts his head.
I was reading he was for that. I think he was kind of trying to mimic more like a bald eagle, and then like some stuff where he's trying to work through a crowd to go to someone. He was trying to more mimic like a shark's movement. So
Nice.
he's trying to do like animal based things. I guess it's part of his programming or something. But yeah, that was his acting decisions, I believe, on his own.
I
Nice.
love thinking that all the directors and producers are like, you don't need to do this work.
Yeah, it's a lot of thought went into this.
Yeah.
But it's an immortal characterization. So
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
whoever's responsible for it, I'm really glad they put in the time they did.
This
Yeah,
is
and I
like
loved how
his
they-
role, right? Like there was no role he did that was bigger.
I can't think of one.
I don't think so.
He's continually working even now. He was in the
Oh, yes,
latest
yeah.
season of Reacher, but
Yeah, it made it to Wayne's World.
Oh, that's
When
right.
Wayne gets pulled over and it's the T-1000, he's like, "Have you seen this boy?" It's like, oh!
yeah.
That was a big cultural moment.
But I just love how they in the T2 script how they so much mirror the first movie, but for a different effect. You know, you have the two show up, you don't know who's good or bad, and they very much play the T-1000 to be the good guy, you know, and they focus in on to serve and protect on the cop car when he arrives, and so you don't know what's going to happen. And they do. There's a lot of moments like that, like the come with me if you want to live, but now it's Arnold instead, and so many moments of mirroring that worked really well.
Agreed. Yeah, I feel like it gets a little fan servicey as the series goes on, but let's talk about Linda Hamilton's transformation as well for T2, because she is now a completely different Sarah Connor than the one we met back in '84. I know that she was training with Arnold to get in shape for T2. There was absolutely a vision as to what this Sarah Connor would look like, knowing what the future holds for her, that she needed to condition herself, that she needed to learn weapons, that she needed to be able to teach her son everything that he would need to know in order to be the leader of the resistance. But I think she gives a terrific performance. It's probably the best thing I've seen her do.
I was reading something that talked about it. It was really great how they initially she starts out, she is like very cold emotionally to her son, just like you were stupid to come and try and get me, you have to protect yourself no matter what. And you could see him like just this kid wanting his mom to love him and being like, I couldn't leave you here. And she's like, it was stupid, don't do that. She doesn't hug him, she just checks him for wounds, and he's like, I'm all right, like stop being that way. And she stays in that mode until near the end when she's trying to go after Dyson's family and she realizes he's a dad. And then she just breaks down. Then when he shows up and she's like, you came for me to stop me? And he's like, yes. And then she hugs him and she breaks down. And it's almost like that's when the power dynamic shifts and he starts becoming the John Connor he has to become. And, so I think her performance really helps that, where she has this coldness because she's had to stay tough, to make him who he is, and done all these things she probably never wanted to do. And then finally it's like, no, I have to be a human too. Like he needs to be a human. He can't be a machine. I can't be a machine. Right. That's what we're fighting.
The Tim, the deleted scenes that made their way back into the extended version for T2, one of those, you referenced the learning computer earlier, but there's that whole removal of the chip from his head. You want to speak to that?
Yeah. So after the first encounter with the T-1000 and the Terminator saves Sarah and they hole up, and he's got to do some repairs. There's probably about a 5 to 10 minute sequence that they deleted where Arnold goes into the limitations of what he can do. They kind of take off his scalp and take out his CPU. So at that moment, he's completely harmless. He's shut down. Sarah is about to bash it. There's a big thing between her and John. John convinces her not to. They still need help with the T-1000. So what they do they do something to the chip. I don't know how they know how to do it, but I think he maybe walked them through it beforehand. But essentially, they unlock something where the Terminator can start learning. It does later stuff where You know, his conversations with John in the very end, it makes a lot more sense how he's understanding everything that's going on from their perspective. So I feel it's important, and just the special effects on it is really cool
Yeah.
too. So that's one of the big things they cut that I think is really important.
Well, it's interesting because then we have the learning computer aspect that gets introduced in Dark Fate,
Mhm.
where, you know, like after he's completed his mission, he just keeps on going and basically becomes very human.
Mhm.
And that does kind of go against that idea of, you know, the limitations of the CPU. Like he would have had to do it to himself, which, you know, obviously he can't do.
I know they probably have the objective where they can't self-terminate, but once their mission objective is complete, you would think that they would have some kind of system to remove that Terminator from the timeline or
Right, right.
something like that.
Yeah, somebody needs to go in and
Um,
eliminate that.
But yeah, that's the best I can think of is his mission was complete, so the restrictions came off of what he can learn now. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
This is a good place to kind of talk our way through our various John Connors that we meet. Edward Furlong, but then there's Nick Stahl in number 3, Christian Bale in part 4, The Salvation, and on through. We don't get John Connor in the last one, do we? Does he show up in Dark Fate?
Briefly,
As Edward Furlong.
Furlong.
Yeah. And then we said earlier, Jason Clarke is in GENISYS. But let's talk about Edward Furlong, because you know he gets a little screechy for my taste, but I also feel like he's authentically a teen in that one.
He's not 30.
It's funny you say that too, because I was just reading this morning that all of his lines in it were redubbed because his voice was changing during the course of the 8-month filming. So even with the redubbing, it's still like you get a lot of that.
And
But
he's too old too.
Right, he's supposed to be 10.
Timeline, he should only be 10 or 11, but he looks 14
wow.
or 15, which I understand why they didn't want to have a 10 or 11-year-old
Sure.
in that role. It just wouldn't have worked.
And then Nick Stahl for Rise of the Machines, I think he does a really nice job. He's an actor I've enjoyed quite a bit, and I think he brings that blend of knowing your destiny and having accepted it, but yet not really being enthusiastic about it. There's a world weariness about him.
I will say it is weird to go from him to Christian Bale, because I think he's still kind of a little bit of that nerdier John Connor as well. And then Christian Bale is, you know, yelling at people for lights.
Yeah, I could see Nick Stahl coming from the Edward Furlong character more. So he's like staying off the grid. He probably, you know, knows those tricks to get money when he needs to, stuff like that. But then, yeah, you got like Christian Bale diving out of a plane into the ocean and finding a submarine by himself. Like, where did he learn how to do this?
Sarah Connor taught him everything.
So he's only ever in 2.
Who, Edward Furlong?
Yes.
And he shows up in a CGI fashion in Dark Fate.
That's what I was going to ask. Is he
did
sour
do a day
about
of
that at
filming
all?
for that.
What's that?
He did a day.
He did a day of filming for Dark Fate.
And then they de-aged him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh God, this poor guy, just left and right. It's like you got to be younger, you got to be older, you got to. I don't blame
time travel movies.
Exactly.
You got to be younger.
But yeah, Christian Bale's incarnation for Terminator Salvation, he is pretty much a straight ahead action hero. But I feel like he is trading time with Sam Worthington's character, who is one of the original Terminators. He's the prototype for the Android version. It's one more time where I think I was starting to have good Terminator fatigue at that point. And I was like, oh man, it's another Android who we're on the side of, instead of humanity versus technology. It's like, no, technology is also on our side as well.
But I thought Kyle Reese was great as the humanity. Was that Anton Yelchin?
It was
Yes.
Anton Yelchin. Him becoming Michael Biehn, I was like, I don't know that tracks for me, but I liked his incarnation of Kyle Reese. And also, can we just talk about Moon Goodblood's character in Salvation, where she completely betrays her entire regiment because this android was nice to her? even though it totally makes sense that the android would be nice to her so that he could get in to the unit. I'm just like, oh man, you're fired. Moon, good
There's
blood.
not a lot of nice guys left, Aaron.
I guess not.
She had to jump on it.
Oh, man, that was rough. You're going to disobey John Connor. I realized we got a little bit ahead. We skipped over Rise of the Machines. What are people's thoughts about that film overall?
3 was a big deal for me. That was the first one I saw in the theater. I was right out of high school, and I had a friend that was working at a theater, so I saw it like 12 times in the theater. It was amazing. Every time we didn't have anything to do that summer, we'd be like, let's go see Terminator 3 again. Bring in like a 12-pack of beer and drink every time that another car hit another car in that amazing car chase. Watching it recently, I had forgotten some things though. I had forgotten that the TX can control other machines, which is a very cool upgrade. I did remember that very bleak ending, which I love. And I was reminded that Claire Danes annoys the shit out of me in that movie. Christiana Loken is fantastic, though.
I can't remember
honestly,
if it's a deleted scene or in the third movie where they have Arnold Schwarzenegger as like the general with the southern accent.
It's a deleted scene.
Oh, that's a deleted scene?
Yeah. So that's the guy they model 101 after.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, but he's got a terrible southern accent.
Southern, yeah.
Honestly, again, I haven't seen it since the 90s, so I just remember the scene with Arnold with the coffin on his shoulder.
I'm useless.
Getting shot at, and that's what I remember. And vaguely remember Nick Stahl being pretty good.
So Kristana Loken, she does kind of takes a page out of the Robert Patrick playbook, completely emotionless. In terms of the upgrade, I agree, but I felt like maybe it was one upgrade too many. Like she had the fancy, spinning device in her arm. She could control the other machine. She was liquid metal. Like, pick a lane. I mean, I like her, but it's again, I think that's where we get just a little too far along, where I'm like, it goes so far into the fantasy realm, whereas I can totally buy a T-800 who's a living tissue over an exoskeleton.
Yeah, I think, well, she does have a solid core. The liquid metal, I think, is more just for camouflage in this one.
Right.
So she can't really do the stabby stuff and all that, I don't think. But she can form that one weapon, but it takes a while to load. So, it's not like she's unstoppable. I don't think it's too much. I think it was good for.
Well, I know
you got to go a little bit bigger, and that's the sequel rule.
It is the sequel rule.
It works great in that car chase. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, that car chase is astonishing with the big crane and Arnie hanging on to it. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I like the plot change in the third one where she's not going after John Connor.
Going after his lieutenants.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just happens to be there. They couldn't find him.
Because he's off the grid.
Yeah.
I think that's like the only emotion you see from her is when it's like, this is John Connor's blood.
Which also, I'm like, wow.
Oh, yeah. I think she smiles when she wants to be sexy to the cop and the boobs get bigger. So she knows how to do some stuff. But
Robert Patrick does that as well in 2. There's a few scenes where he kind of does this little grin, but it's all in the service of being just getting the information he wants. It's not an actual emotion.
Daniel, I saw where your mind went about whether his
Kate said it. Kate said it.
Oh, I remember that in part 2.
Remember when Robert Patrick's boobs get bigger? So yeah, Salvation, Tim made the point about taking place in the world of the Resistance. And I think that's a fun place to get into. It's the whole thing about prequels, though, where we start to explain a bit more than maybe is necessary. I think the first one's such a great, simple concept. And so to continue to learn more and more and more takes some of the magic away from me.
I like that they created a whole new world for the franchise. It was something different. I was not excited at all to hear like McG was directing and it was going to be PG-13, but I still went to see it in the theater. There's a lot I like about it. The giant Terminators, things that are grabbing the people and like storing them in there to take them to the camps. I thought that was an awesome scene. Not so much to like kind of like Transformers or Power Rangers thing where they had like motorcycles and stuff coming out of it, but it would make sense that they'd have like faster things to chase them aside from like aerial vehicles. But yeah, just a lot of the actual like Skynet and Terminator stuff we can't see in a modern world, I thought was really cool. It's good to see Michael Ironside though.
Yep, never a bad thing.
Love him. My husband gives me such a hard time about him. He's like, sorry, I'm not fucking Michael Ironside.
Not everybody can be Michael Ironside.
Why not?
I know it's post-apocalyptic, but I remember just being disappointed it was all desert. So the only memory I have from like the first time I saw it, because then I feel like that makes it easier for CGI too.
And then GENISYS, where things get really, I mean, we really do get an alternate reality. You know, we get a different Sarah Connor, we get a different Kyle Reese, and we kind of get a different Terminator in the form of John Connor.
So this was the last one I watched for this. I had only seen it once in the theater. I remember enjoying it fine, especially since I think I got the ticket for free. And I had talked to Aaron about how much he disliked it upon recently watching it. So I started watching it Friday, and I watched the first half, and I was getting tired, so I turned it off. I woke up in the morning, and I'm like thinking about it, and I'm like, some of this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, I'm not going to let Aaron get in my head. I'm finishing this. And I enjoyed it. And I was watching it with my wife, and she enjoyed it. She even cried at the end when Arnold says, "Take care of my Sarah." She started bawling.
That's really cute. Oh, she's hormonal. Give her a break.
I know. No, it's very cute. But no,
Tim's wife is pregnant, by the way. Just
not that she's on
really
her
like, but she didn't. No reaction from her from anything Amelia Clark was doing with her dramatics, but Arnold really got her. So that shows his acting chops have improved so much over this series. But it's a lot of fun. I don't like Jason Clarke. There's some cool concepts with that. I don't think they ever say it, but I read it's a T3000.
Okay.
I think it was cool. I don't know if they explicitly state it, but I guess from all the other sequels, Skynet has like learned from the other timelines, and that's how they were able to have this trap set for John Connor. So it makes sense kind of in a multiverse kind of way. Yeah, I think you just turn your brain off and enjoy it. I do like the aging of the Terminator skin too, since it is supposed to be living tissue. I think that was a cool thing where he does age, since he's been on there since 73, I think they say, because he went back to save Sarah when she was 9, I think.
Right. And then he becomes Pops to her.
Yeah.
This one just feels a little cutesy for my taste. It also, again, having different characters not behaving the way I know and love them. But I think the other thing, and I ask this of whenever I see reboots, or like the most recent Indiana Jones movie is a good example, where I was watching and going, is this really what they think fans of the franchise want? Is this kind of supersized version where everything becomes a cartoon, everybody becomes prettier? And I was like, I don't think that's what the fans, if you're catering to nostalgia, like why wouldn't you give them more of what they liked, as opposed to trying to do something bigger and shinier and better? Or is that trying to draw in a younger audience? I don't know. I think
it's the biggest audience possible is what they're hoping for, and it's not what they got.
Do you think they're successful at that, though? I feel like every time we get proved that that's not what anybody wants. It's not what the young audience wants. It's not what the nostalgia audience wants.
Because the wrong people are running the ship.
There's a reason why I have not watched 3 through 1000. I don't know, 1 and 2 are very special to me. Like, I don't know that I want to fuck that up. I feel like I hit like pause on my like Terminator maturity.
Yeah. Sequels to me never can ruin the original. So I look at them all separately. I do like
Yeah, but
continuity
they
in
turn
that,
you
but
off, then you don't look at them the same way.
I'm with Tim that it doesn't affect my appreciation for the early ones. It does. I mean, I just don't enjoy them as movies, so it's my time. I'm like going, well, I wish I hadn't spent my time watching that, except so that now I can talk about it on a panel, but beyond that, I'm trying to like there isn't the same value to it. And if the movies are intended to entertain, I just wonder, like where that decision making takes place, where it's like, we're going to take this in this direction. The presumption would be that this is so it entertains new fans and old fans. But I feel like it ends up not pleasing anybody because it kind of lands in that middle ground.
You're using the name to try and generate the money and the interest. But if you had a cool idea, then just make a new time travel movie and people might like it. As opposed to you have a ton of fans who are going to be like, well, this sucks as a Terminator movie. Like, I enjoyed GENISYS, not as a Terminator movie, but it was a fun action movie for what it was. And I like Emilia Clarke, but she was miscast. I think that happens all the time. And an instance of where they didn't was Quiet Place was originally supposed to be a sequel to Cloverfield. And I think as it developed, they were like, no, this is like too good. Like, we need to make it its own thing. And imagine if it had been connected into that, it wouldn't have been a hit, I don't think, because it would have developed differently. But because they were like, we have a cool idea, let's just like make a cool movie. And they do that too often, like, let's just suck off the name, but then we have to tie it back in, but it doesn't really fit the story that we're making.
No, I agree. Having the courage to do that, I think I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't aware of Quiet Place and its genesis. But I think you can't help but kind of compare and despair when you're using the franchise. It's like, of course, they're going to refer back to previous installments. And of course, they're going to want to be. I mean, I think T2, Aliens, those are kind of those beautiful unicorn sequels where it takes the idea and it takes it in a different direction, but does it in a pleasing way, in a way that feels authentic to the original. In T2, we get basically Jim Cameron doing a do-over of that scene, that flashback sequence from the original Terminator, where you've got the hunter killers and everything's just a little smoother. It's a little more polished. It's a little more professional. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. Just don't make an entire movie like that. But if you want to recreate a certain scene and make it a little more polished, I'm totally fine with that.
Those Terminators were all animatronic too. That wasn't CGI. Stan Winston, baby.
Exactly. Give me those practical effects every time.
Yeah. I did read an interesting thing about T2 where that scene where all the lasers are that kind of lavender purple. That light is never used again in the movie until they're shooting the scenes in the lab with you when you're actually seeing the remnants of the original T2. They have that same purple lighting that it kind of like representing like this is the evil, where the rest is very blue lit. Except for those two scenes have that lavender light.
That's a great observation. I mean, James Cameron is absolutely a visual stylist and a groundbreaking filmmaker. I mean, I don't want to disrespect him in any way. I just think like his early films really show what an innovative, visionary filmmaker he is.
And so much attention to detail to me in those earlier ones, especially. But
we started off as a production designer. Like I said, that totally makes sense. Let us plunge forward into our dark fate, our final installment, and which sees the return of Linda Hamilton. And I'm curious to hear what people's thoughts were about the legacy character before I opine myself.
I remember that one I was really excited to see in theater. And the only main memory, I haven't had time to rewatch that one before this, but I just remember thinking what a disservice to John Connor and like what they've set up over 25 years and then just have it all dealt in like an exposition flashback.
It's better than just saying this happened, I guess. Kind of like in 3 where they're like, oh yes, my mom's dead.
That's right.
And that's where that coffin is. Yeah, I was excited when this came out and I heard like, James Cameron was producing, involved in writing, Linda Hamilton was back. Arnold Schwarzenegger was only 72. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect when I saw that first scene, and everyone was de-aged. I don't like to watch trailers of stuff I'm gonna go see, so I didn't know if this was gonna be the movie. But yeah, they answered that question very quickly.
I thought it was a decent movie, still not a great Terminator movie. I didn't find who is the Terminator? It's Diego somebody, I think. I'm blanking on his name, but I just
I
didn't
forget.
find him intimidating enough. He wasn't scary, and he felt a little bit kind of like a retread of Robert Patrick's T-1000 to me.
Yep.
So there was cool aspects of it, but again, I don't, for me the series really is the first two.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like this is very much an attempt to do a version where it's female forward, where it's ethnically diverse, and to still have Arnold in the mix as well. Coming from that kind of standpoint of I'm trying to create a movie that checks a lot of boxes, I don't mind it in that regard. It does feel a little kind of boardroom created,
Hmm.
but I think it's a pretty decent big budget studio film. I genuinely enjoyed seeing Linda Hamilton back. I'm sorry they gave her kind of one note to play because she's
Yeah.
just kind of grouchy through the whole thing. But I was glad to see her back in the mix, and I do like our other two lead actresses as well. I think they do a really nice job. It gets a little bit cartoony in terms of all the fight sequences. I'm just like, well, I'm clearly watching cartoons fighting other cartoons. Again, still worthwhile for me.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. I didn't really care for the actor playing the Rev 9. On the contrast, I do like the Terminator model they use, so like the CGI and stuff of it, where it can split itself, the liquid metal can form its own unit while
Right.
still having the exoskeleton do other stuff. I thought was a cool idea. But yeah, it doesn't bring anything else really new to the table. Much like the movie, the human protector, it's kind of derivative of salvation. I did read like James Cameron like picked what he liked from 3, 4, and 5 and put it in here. So you have a lot of that. Yeah, so it almost is kind of like a best of, but let's like add some new characters, make it a little bit more modern. It's enjoyable, but yeah, nothing blew me away.
Yeah, it fits right into this last decade of legacy sequels, I think.
Yeah.
That trying to reboot something but really honor the original, but most of those sequels just didn't do it.
I really liked the finale. I thought it was where everybody teams up against the Terminator, and it really does require the entire team to prevail.
Mhm.
That felt really exciting, even in its cartooniness. Like I enjoyed watching the sacrifice and watching people rise and come in to fill their place. I also like the fact that the savior of the future is no longer a man; it's going to be a woman.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of really positive things about it. Again, for a big for a franchise that's 6 deep at this point.
Yeah, I did just remember I did like I don't know what they were. I think they're different than the Rev 9s, but when they're showing like the flash forwards again, they have like those Terminators with almost like liquid metal tentacles coming
Mm,
out of their back. I just thought that looked really cool.
yeah, there's some fun design stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But let's bring it all back to the original. Any closing thoughts on the Terminator from 1984 and what it has wrought?
I read that this movie, The Terminator, is called The Electronic Murderer in Poland because they already have like a job position there called Terminator that's like dealing with paperwork. So it wouldn't have sounded very threatening.
It's like the accountant.
The actuary.
But by the time Terminator 2 came out, Arnold was like known as the character Terminator. So all the rest of them now are called Terminator in Poland.
And all the Polish accountants are awesome. Like everybody's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
finally,
call me Terminator. That's right.
some recognition.
Exactly.
The one thing I think we didn't touch on with the original, in reading about it, multiple places talk about it, is the religious imagery.
Mm.
John Connor is a JC. He's a Christ figure. And Sarah Connor is Mary, and Kyle Reese is the angel Gabriel coming to say, you're going to have a son, and he's going to save the world. Now, it differs from there, but like this is what it is. Like and then, technically the angel gets her pregnant, not God, but like that there was a strong and probably intentional idea of like, this is, because a lot of, you name your character with a JC and he's going to save the world. He's Jesus figure. Yep. So I just thought it was kind of an interesting piece of it. The only other thing I'm surprised none of us mentioned was how relevant these movies still are, because this is AI. Like this whole discussion that this series has been having is what we are having now, or we will be having in the next 10 years. Like this is happening whether we want it to or not. And can we stop it? I don't know. And is it going to be good or bad or both? Like that is the discussion of the moment. We don't know what our immediate future holds. And it's that these are one of the possibilities.
Thank you for mentioning both those points, Mark. I would have been sad had we not gotten that on camera.
The one thing I remember, it's not necessarily from the first Terminator, but it's the excitement around the second Terminator collector's DVD steelbook case, that I feel like I have a memory of that being one of the first DVD Easter eggs where you could unlock the whole director's cut by putting in the Judgment Day or something on the DVD remote. But I remember it being this whole process that would work 20% of the time, but when you got to be so exciting, and then you get to see the full movie. And I remember that excitement as well, because I had that with my dad, who also, it's the first DVD, and him trying to figure out technology as it's advancing as well. And I just have that fond memory of these movies.
I'll just say that James Cameron considers this a tech noir movie, and that's why the club in the movie is called Tech Noir. Yes. But yeah, super, super important movie series in my life. This is what made me the movie fan I am today, growing up with this stuff. So love it, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, thank you all for coming on and sharing your thoughts and memories about the Terminator franchise. Looking forward to having you all on again very soon. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.